Are you ready to save our kids? If children are the living messages that we send to a time that we will not see, Save Our Kids is an opportunity for you to be introduced to a few school and student helpers that will support each child's individual journey. If there is a space or a place to improve the lives of our children, we know a few families and business owners who have made it their business to answer the call for help and provide a solution to those quietly discussed challenges that impact our children and eventually us all. We could not just choose one kiddo to save, so we are asking for your help to reach more. Join Keeping Your Kids Safe as we identify some of the problems and share a few solutions that have been created just for you. Welcome, welcome. Hello, hello, friends. How are you today?
Hey.
Doing well. How are you?
I'm a little nervous, but I'm very excited to have all of these faces staring back at me today. So yay. Yeah. So thanks for being here today. I think it's cool. I'm kind of nervous. I don't know why today, but it's okay. That just means I'm doing the right things. So cool. Welcome to the party, friends. How are you today on this Tuesday afternoon? Is your week going as you planned? Anybody?
All good with me.
Jump in. Yeah, I was going to say, things are good here. Weather's great. It's like 75 and sunny, so I can't complain. Sorry.
It's cold and rainy here.
So, hey, I know so none of you got all of that snow, right?
Nope.
No.
Then we are doing so much better than others. All that snow that dropped in California. Woo wee.
Yeah,
So glad to not be there. Yeah.
All day.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna go ahead and go around Red Robin. I think that's how we say it, Red Robin, and say, okay, what does everybody do? Who you support? Tell people about you because we want to know. We want to share you with them. Hello, Sharon. Hopefully, you will get lots of great information from this. We're gonna start with Christina.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christina DiBernardo. I am a licensed mental health counselor in the state of New York. I have a group private practice called Expressive Connections Mental Health Counseling. Oh, other hand, right here. And we provide mental health counseling services to individuals, couples, and families. We work with kids as young as 3 years old. We specialize in working with kids and teens and helping them navigate the difficulties of the world and different mental health diagnoses and challenges. But one of the things that makes our practice unique is that whenever we bring a child on, we are bringing on the whole family. So it's not just you dropping your child off for therapy for the hour, and then maybe we call you every once in a while. We are making sure that the families are getting involved just as much as the child is getting involved at a minimum of a monthly basis so that we can make sure that we're supporting the family as a whole, really creating a connected unit within the family, because when one person in a family unit is suffering, everybody is suffering. We also provide mental health and wellness education in community organizations locally as well as not so locally, and we provide corporate wellness solutions as well. But today we're here to talk about kids and teens and what they need. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. Shout out to Phil. Hey, Phil, how you doing?
Yes, Phil, how you doing? So I'm excited you're here because I think that for the most part, a lot of times we talk about mental health with our children and things like that. And I don't hear a lot of the conversations going any further. I think we talk about it in the way that says, yes, this is something that should be discussed, but nobody goes any further. So I'm very happy and grateful that you're here because I think we're going to be able to go a little further with our conversation today.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. All right, Keith, you're up.
Hey, everybody. So my name is Keith Senzer. I am a youth empowerment leadership coach. I have a private practice. I do one-on-one coaching focused on social emotional learning, and I do a ton of work with executive functioning. I work with students one-on-one on EF skills, helping them get their time management, organizational skills, study habits, note-taking skills, everything they need to thrive in an educational environment. I also do group coaching with executive functioning as well as social emotional learning. I also have curriculum that I've written for schools. I have a full social emotional learning curriculum designed to be brought into a school district to be used to teach students over 23 to 30 weeks. I have a podcast called Teen Speak, where I bring teens on to talk about their struggles and how they overcame them, which I find gives permission for other teens to speak about their struggles and feel safer knowing that they're not alone. And hi to Phil, I sit on the board of Helpopedia, which is a non-for-profit that focuses on providing these types of services to families and students to help families and students thrive in their environment. And happy to be here and answer any questions and share whatever wisdom I have. Just as an aside, I have ADHD, found out when I was 45. My son has ADHD. I have a daughter with anxiety disorder. So, I've lived through this, and I really do get a lot of what it's like being a parent, working with kids like that and understanding their needs and how to approach them differently.
You come from a different perspective for sure, because you're coming from the place of definitely coaching youth and the adults and how they can improve their communication and how they can improve their trajectory of development, right? But I love the fact that I hate the fact that you had to experience that, but there are two things. One is you were not diagnosed until you were much older. So that means that there's space for improvement in our school systems as well as our PCPs and things like that. Because someone somewhere along the line should have picked up or could have picked up that this was something that you had, a hurdle that you were going to have to live with for the rest of your life. And they could have given you skills. So I love the fact that you're like, okay, this didn't happen for me, so let me help other people so that they don't have that same experience. So I'm loving you, Keith. And thank you for, so I think today I can actually pronounce your last name. I don't know that I could do it before.
It's easy.
So it's cool. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Kristen, you're up.
Hello. Happy afternoon. Happy Tuesday at this point. I think it is afternoon most places, at least. My name is Kristen Norai, and I am the founder of Inclusion Advocates and Allies, which is a special education advocacy group. And our goal is to be helping families battle through the special education process and navigate with confidence to be able to get the best supports in place for their child, whether it be through a IEP or a 504 plan. So I do help both sets of parents, IEPs and 504s. I am a former educator of 23 years and spent time as both a general educator and special educator before deciding to make that switch and come out of the classroom. My decision to leave public education really is one of the reasons that I come on all these shows so much. I decided to leave education to try and help fix education. And I'm working very strongly, very much with Christine Lynn Jones. She and I co-authored a book called Bridging the Educational Gap Between Home and School. And the goal of the book is that it is an interactive workbook for parents to be able to support their children in the home setting with social emotional learning, behavior, building basic routines and time management skills, understanding how to support their child in unraveling their feelings, delving into what to do if things aren't going well, how to support their children academically, also just through natural, things that you would do in the home setting. But then also, what do you do if it's not working? Who do you talk to? What steps do you need to take, and kind of guiding parents through that process. The idea is it's a one-stop shop. Parents can keep notes in there, whether it be from the doctor's office or, going to meet with teachers, but they can keep all of it in one place so that they have that information and data about behavior and social emotional needs for their children. One of the things that we absolutely love about it is that we've taking it one step further now, and we're building courses to go around the book, not just for parents, but also for coaching teachers on how to increase parent engagement and support parents better from their perspective without feeling like they have to be the parent. So that's a new thing that we're just getting started. And we are officially kicking off a movement, and we are using the hashtag Bridging the Educational Gap. And our goal is to see true movement and change in the public school system across the nation. So thank you, Tabitha, for having me on today.
Look at you, friend. Okay, you got a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack. I like the fact that you were able to go and say, I spent over 20 years in the classroom, and here are my gaps. And if I could have just, so now turning around and saying, okay, as we're ushering in a new group, that let me give you some pointers that are going to help improve your chances of success. So I love the fact that you turned around and was willing to say, if I would have had this would have made my life a little easier.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about you and things like that. So then there's me, Tabitha. Okay, so I don't have a thing, but I would like to ask if you can go ahead and like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. My name is Tabitha Barron, and I am the founder of Keeping Your Kids Safe. Because of an incident that happened with my niece being placed on the wrong school bus twice in the same school year as a 5-year-old, we learned that there was a lot of things that were going on in there. And I'm not here to say, oh, they're so wrong, they did everything backwards. No, what I'm saying is that they need help. I counted my kids and I only had 2. Every time we walked out of the store, 1, 2, I got them both, right? But what we find is when we go to school, those principals have 700, 800, sometimes upwards of 900 students all at once in one concentrated area. And that is hard for anybody to manage. So we're here to help you manage and streamline your arrival and dismissal for school, avoiding the opportunity of a predator getting hold of a child or a child being missing, lost, and eventually potentially dying. So that's where we are. One of the first things I always like to start with is the statistics and what we're here for. So 1, this setting is meant to say thank you to all the teaching staff. Thank you, paraprofessionals, superintendents, principals, all of you. Thank you. If you're doing a great job and we see you, we know you are there, and we want to help and support you, and we appreciate your work. The purpose is this: to not bash what you're doing wrong, to not highlight and call out those things that you're and saying, let's point the finger. We are here to highlight options that you may not be aware of as a parent, as a teacher, as a principal, and as a super. There are way too many of us out here working to help solve problems that we have personally experienced from our families, our children, and people that we know. So we want to show you our appreciation and let you know that we're here, you're not alone, and we're willing to dig in with you. This is the reason why. There are about 50 million children to go to school every single school year. That number, if you look at 50 million and only having 90,000 school teachers across the United States, you guys are grossly outnumbered. For that reason, we do recognize you'll need some help. We do know that number is going to go down in 2031. It is estimated to be about 46 million children that will go to school. So that is definitely a reduction. The reduction in numbers is actually letting you know that people are saying that this educational system is not giving them what they want. If a student is in school for 180 school days, that equates to 1,260 hours per year. But because we as parents have to work during the course of the year, we also are, for 40-hour work weeks, we're spending 2,080 hours per year at our jobs, not including travel time, which means that overall, we're spending about 2,600 hours away from our children. That means that the partners that you want to have, the partners that you need to have in education needs to be schools. So we have to figure out how to work successfully together. I believe in a co-parenting model, which is the parent number 1 is home, parent number 2 is the school, and the bonus parent is the community. Parent number 1, you are teacher number 1, and the first line of defense for your children. Your co-parenting person or group is going to be the school, because they're taking care of your students while you're at work. If you do not figure out how to co-parent successfully with the schools, your children lose. And until we figure that out, our children are still going to struggle, and their response to us is not going to be a favorable one. The bonus parent is one that we all have because we all live in a community. None of us are living on an island alone. So the community snatches your child out of harm's way in some cases, lets you know when Johnny's peeing in the trash can when he's not supposed to, and when they're going to go, and when somebody is trying to grab them and get them back, right? So the community is there to help you where you don't have eyes. I recommend building the right community in order to be supportive. So, the other thing is I want to say thank you to, I have a special thanks to Helpopedia, our friends at Helpopedia. Thank you, Phil, for always supporting us and making sure that we are on the radar. If you are a heart-centered business owner who wants to support children and parents, please go ahead and scan that QR code and connect with Phil Vitrano, because him and Laura Lynn are the ones that are leading the charge for Helpopedia, and we want to support them. Okay, so now we're gonna get started. And the first question I have. Oh, we got some people. First question I have is, okay, I had this conversation a couple days ago, and this is what they said. So the conversation came out like this: why is math 1 + 1 no longer 2? Why do we have is the new curriculum to teach above the parents' heads so that they cannot help support their children in during their education? So I just throw the question out there.
I can speak as a parent who have 2 kids who are done with college. I mean, I could never help them with math. I did not understand any of that. Like, I think I understood why they wanted it, right? It's like they want the critical thinking and trying to get them to think about, why. And I guess for me, it was just, I just knew, right? You just knew 9 times 9 is 81, right? Like you just knew these things. So it was a struggle for me as a parent. And my son with his ADHD struggled tremendously with math. Like he was definitely he was a science kid, not a math kid. So, thank God my wife is a special ed teacher and educator and administrator. So she was able to jump in. But I think if I didn't have her, I think it would have been way more money than I spent on tutors than I needed to.
I agree. So here's a couple of things though. One is that my niece came to me. My mom says, go to her. She'll help you with the math. So she comes and she puts this thing. I'm like, okay, I'll help you with the math. No problem. She puts this down on my lap. And I was like, oh, no. The answer is wrong. But I have no clue how you got there. Not using that method. And I feel like that's a setup in 2 places. One is that now you remove the ability to get the help at home that you needed to support the teachings at school. So that's the one side. The second side is you set the student up to fail. No matter what happens, they're going to fail. They see pass or fail. And that's a mental health thing. So that starts to tick away at their confidence level. And I would like Christina to talk a little bit about the impact to some of those for some of those actions, teaching above the parents so that the student doesn't have a place to go.
Yeah. So one of the things that I see all the time, one of the things that I hear all the time from the kids that we work with is, well, if the adults in my life aren't doing this, why should I? Or if my parents say that like this makes no sense, how am I supposed to be the one that understands it? And so there is a disconnect between what the kids are experiencing and what the parents are able to help them with. And the problem with that is that as the adult figures in their lives, we're supposed to lead by example. And if we can't, that makes it really hard to convince kids this is good for you. Not only that, but I love talking about failure because it's such an essential part of becoming a human. We all fail, but the intention for failure is to learn something from it. And if we're setting kids up for failure, not in a way that will actually help them learn and grow, we're just setting them up for self-deprecation and lack of confidence and anxiety issues and perfectionism, which is not necessarily I'm the best at everything and have to be the best at everything. Sometimes it's if I'm not here, I'm clearly the worst. And so if we're setting kids up for failure just for the sake of setting them up for failure, that's not a valuable lesson in my personal and professional opinion, because then you have kids just struggling saying, what's the point? As opposed to how can I overcome this challenge?
That's a big thing. Go ahead, Kristen.
I think I'm very blessed that I left the classroom when I did, at least in terms of teaching math. My last 10 years or so that I was with the school system, I worked as a SEL coordinator and behavior specialist. So I wasn't teaching the math, but I watched the frustration of the students and that same thing. You know, if I couldn't explain it to them, then they were like, well, why do I have to learn it if you don't even know how to do it this way? You know, and I was never a math student. I was always somebody that struggled in math. When I taught math before it changed, it was so nice to be able to teach it and show kids, okay, there's, 1 + 1 is 2. And here are a couple different ways you can do that, but pick which one works for you. Now it's, you have to do it this way. And I don't understand why we've set it up that way, And then I know that, I have friends that work as math specialists who I can hear them in the back of my head, going, don't be criticizing what we're doing. It's all great. And, things, and we host, different parent nights. They do host parent nights and, put together events, but you can't, that's not teaching the parents how to do the math. One night at coming up to school to see something demonstrated is not enough. And I just don't understand, that to me, that came from federal down. So again, our system's broken, and that's why we're on the outside trying to fix it.
Yeah.
So I would love to have Sharon on the show, because apparently she's a teacher, right?
She brought up a really good point. She just
Used to be.
commented that they're being taught to pass the tests, and
Yes.
teachers don't have a chance. And that's so true. You're essentially creating like a farm system where it's just about getting the kids through it, and then not actually focused on what are they learning, what are the skills that they're learning. And if the kids don't learn the material, they're still getting pumped through the system anyway. And then by the time they get to somebody like Coach Keith, who is trying to help them, or an organization like Helpopedia that's trying to help them navigate what their future could look like, they've got no idea where to even begin, because they learned how to do 1 + 1 = I don't know, whatever it's supposed to equal nowadays. For me, it's still 2.
That's what I just said.
But you've got a bunch of kids who, and Sharon also mentioned the lack of self-confidence.
Yep.
Calling back to the statistic that you mentioned, kids are spending how many hours a year in school? Something like 2,000. And
Yep.
if everything else in the world is kind of coming after their self-esteem and self-confidence with social media, that's a different conversation. But they're spending 2,000 hours a week in school. There needs to be some kind of shift where we're helping them gain the essential skills that they need around decision-making, learning, critical thinking, all of that stuff that's important, but also in a way that helps them become confident, productive leaders and consumers in today's society.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, with the math, especially, I understand why it came down, right, from federally, like what the process behind it was. But like, now that we're in it, for me, it's like, if you want to teach them critical thinking skills, no, they're not going to go through life and be like, 8 times 8, where, like, they're not going to do that. If you want to teach them how to critically think and problem solve, like, we're better off actually teaching them, present them with real world problems that they're going to see, right? And help them role play and get through those problems and understand how they can move through those problems, because that's where they're going to thrive. So like, I understand the way it was formatted, right? And like the way we do things and why we do things. It's just sometimes, we have to reflect and be like, isn't there a better way? And to even say about like teaching to the test. I mean, there's a lot of homeschool networks now, and what they do very differently is they test first, and they identify what the students don't know, and then they teach. And these kids don't have any pressure to perform, right? They're like, it's a whole different. And I'm not saying we should pull our kids out of school and homeschool. I'm just saying, yeah, I'm just saying. But if we can learn that, because these kids, and it's also, it's not, they put so much pressure on themselves, right? And like society about like kids that do choose to go to college, right? There's those kids that are so much stressed, they think they have to go to the best. And then you have the kids who don't feel like it's going to be for them, right? And society is, half the jobs that we don't want to do that we need somebody to do those,
Yeah.
Plumbers and electricians make a lot of money. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a plumber and electrician. We all need them at one point in our life, right? And
Yes.
so like, just these kids have so much pressure that they put on themselves, whether it's academically, what they're going to do down the road. And like, if we can teach them, that's why SEL is so important, these problem solving and just how to deal with their social emotional health and be able to follow what they want and verbalize and communicate what they need. I think that's what they need. And we don't do that. I feel like they're in a box with education, and I think we don't allow them to expand outside of that. And I think that's harmful, quite honestly.
It is. It comes down to, so when look at because Phil brings up this point, 90% of the students have reported that they are sleep deprived. We know that they're either overscheduled and they're not getting the sleep that they need in order to be successful in class. But they're also reporting 44% are reporting depression, 37% are reporting anxiety, right? And 55% of our teachers they want to quit. So you have two sides that are running here. One is the student no longer wishes to go to school. It's no longer relevant. It's no longer getting them where they need to go. Their friends and maybe not their friends directly, their brothers and sisters and their other family friends do not have the job that was promised to them based off of what was promised to us, right? Go to school, if you go to school to get a good grade, you'll get a good job, things like that. These kids are not, the new student is not coming out with that at all. And so if they're looking at the examples that are in front of them, there is no motivation to go to school. One is they're concerned about their safety. Two, they're concerned that the person that's teaching them is unhappy to be there. And if you ever teach a child from an unhappy place, what you're gifting them is your unhappiness on top of the lesson that they're not going to be able to pick up. No one walks around picking up anything that smells yucky and is gross and that they have to wash their hands for. So you teaching through a lens of unhappiness. I hate this job. I hate these kids, things like that. What are the kids picking up? They're picking up that math is a horrible thing. 1 + 1 is no longer 2 because the lattice says it's wrong. And I never added an X because I never made it to algebra. So math and reading are together. So if they don't know math, then they can't do numbers. They can't balance their checkbooks. Therefore, now we have a problem in the financial side. When they can't read the contract and they can't read the plea agreement. So they sign their lives away and they end up in jail for the rest of their lives because they can't read. Both of those systems actually feeds the larger system that says, I am going to get a financial win because 37% of our population can't read or do math. And that is a tragedy right there. So I don't know, how do we solve that? And this conversation actually went exactly where I thought it was going to go, because when you talk about alignment in real life experiences, most of the subjects that I learned K through 12, I didn't turn around and use a lot. So how do we get our students to that place where we are able to teach them so that they can get better? Christina said we're teaching to the test. Christine said we're teaching to the test. We're teaching to the test. Indiana Public Schools get their funding based on performance, which is why teachers teach to the test. But all school districts, I will say it and stand on this square. It is not working. Please, let's discuss what can work better, because my child is struggling and they're an adult now. And it's all because I was pushed out of being able to understand the subjects in order to support them at home while the school supported them at school. So Let's talk about a little bit about that.
Families need more support within the community and from the education system. Lots of kids and then parents get punished when their kids aren't getting it, whatever that means. We work a lot with kids who have ADHD and different social emotional learning challenges, diagnoses, whatever language you want to use. And I get so many parents coming in and saying, my child has a diagnosis of ADHD and keeps on getting scolded in the classroom because they not paying attention, whatever it is. And then when I actually sit down with the kid, I go to the parents, I'm like, your kid is gifted. Your kid gets the information before everybody and then gets bored because the way that they're being taught isn't actually meeting their specific needs. And so I think one way to address some of these issues is you have to assess how each individual child actually learns. What way do they process information and that their brains can actually absorb it? Are they auditory learners? Are they visual? Are they experiential? Because you have kids who do very well when you give them something to read, memorize it or absorb the information. And then you've got kids who really don't. I have no learning disabilities, but I do not process things well when I'm reading them. I process well when I'm listening to it, when I'm absorbing it that way, and then I replicate it through experience. That's what works for me personally. And I know so many kids that that's the way that it works as well. And then how can we take this, how can we support families and kids rather than say, well, you're just not getting it, you're just not paying attention, so we're going to suspend you, we're going to, you've got to stay home for X amount of time, parents, we're going to start to, make complaints against this, however it works, because now you have kids who are school avoidant, and that's a whole mess in and of itself, and you're punishing families for it, as opposed to saying, well, why is this kid school avoidant? Is it something that's going on in school? Is it something that's going on at home? Is there a bullying situation happening? What can we do here?
I'm happy to share a story because I think this will make sense for a lot of people because it really traumatized my whole school experience. When I was in first grade, so like I said, I didn't know I had ADHD till I was like 45. I'll never forget when I was in first grade, I had a teacher trying to teach me how to count by tens, 10, 20, 30, 40, and I couldn't get it. And I remember her grabbing my chin and like looking me in the face. She must have been so frustrated with me and being like, this is not so hard. She yelled at me and pinched my chin. So forget what my father would have done if he found out about this. But to that day, I don't think I ever raised my hand in middle school, high school, rest of elementary school. I got progress reports sent home with me, right? And just so you know, that I'm not going to say how much. I have a very high IQ, but I did not perform at all. And my teachers would always say, I don't understand. Like, he's so smart, but he just, I graduated high school with literally a 72 average. And when I got away from all those people and I went to college and I was able to actually have a different environment away from everything and be on my own, I graduated college with a 3.99. And it's then that I realized that I didn't know I had ADHD, but I realized I have control what I want to do. I have to figure out my own systems and do what works for me and learn the way I need to learn. And that's where I was able, I can't listen to lectures. That's not the way I learn. I need to read. I need to write. So I was the kid reading the textbook and I was the kid doing all the stuff that maybe the other kids weren't doing. Right. But that worked for me. And I think just the reason I'm sharing this is to jump on what Christine was saying. It's it's unfortunate, but it's so structured. Every kid learns differently. So unless you understand how that kid learns, not every kid in your classroom, especially if it's a regular, it's not an inclusion class or special ed class, right? The teachers, they know what they know and they teach the way they teach. But you get those few kids in there who just don't learn that way, they're definitely going to miss something. And I think there's always a problem with the deficit, finding out what the deficit is. And it's too late. By then they're already failing or they're struggling, I just wish there was a way to identify that beforehand. So we can get these kids what they need so they feel better, because my confidence was shattered. I was afraid to be wrong. I never raised my hand. I can only imagine how many other students struggle with this now because they just don't understand the material. They're just not learning it the same way. And nobody taught them how to advocate or say, hey, is there a different way? So just wanted to put that out there because I think it's important for this conversation.
This is very true, Kristen.
I was going to say,
Christine actually mentioned the fact that her child had the same problem. And a lot of times we make snap judgments. Excuse me, from a leadership standpoint, we make snap judgments about people and then tell the children not to be judgmental. That's a contradiction of its own. But what I'm saying is that Christine has had this problem with her child, and she mentions we must reimagine our schools for a better outcome for the students and society. We are encouraging children to misbehave the way they're currently misbehaving because the consequences of their bad behavior or behavior that is not favorable is not the same as the consequences we had when we were growing up. So, and now we've gotten people so used to not having windows or being in an environment that is not conducive with them learning or wanting to do better. Then we're upset with them because of the choices that they make, which is not fair. You know, I like the fact that Kristen has said before, it's unfortunate that we discipline a child for something we never taught them how to do, right? So that's why for me, I didn't spank my children. You know, I would just remind them. I'm like, okay, so I don't like the way that sounds, so please try another way, right? And I had some very creative ways to get them to snap them out of that place and get them to realize you're talking to a human person and you need to be respectful about the conversation. But that was me teaching them how I wanted to be spoken to. But we don't do that. The teaching staff doesn't. I witnessed a paraprofessional screaming at this child as if he did something, as if he bombed the building. And I was like, are you serious? That's not how this 8-year-old's going to learn that that's not the right thing to do. But they are allowed to get away with it because although I was standing there and completely like disgusted by that example, the leadership was standing there too, and they did nothing. So what did the child learn? The child learned that there is the only way adults know how to communicate to them is screaming at them, even though he was the lost one and she was the one looking for him, but he was the lost one. So if you're yelling at him for 7 hours a day, when he goes home, he is not trying to hear his name being called or anything else. Now, I can tell you in that situation, that student was moved to another school because when I showed up at another school, he was at that school versus the other one. So somebody's seen it, and I think it was a parent that moved him because it wasn't okay how that worked. But this becomes a mental health thing too, because it's that thing is all of this. If we were having a hard time during a pandemic with everything being closed down, we took away the one thing, and I say we as adults, not we as Tabitha did it. No. We as the ones owning this process closed the doors for a safe space for some, a place where they were getting a meal, a place where they could run from their abuser just for a short period of time, a place where they had somebody that they can talk to. And we didn't address that. And now we're dealing with that again because now these students have been brought back in. Now their anxiety is heightened. Some of the parents have realized they don't want their children in school and they're pulling them out to place them elsewhere. So what solutions can we give to people who are listening that says, this is what, so each one of you come with an example. This is what you can do to help your student, whether that's bridge that gap with your teacher, help them overcome the fact that SEL has been removed from their classroom or from their schools or anything like that. So we want to give solutions now as to how we can help these parents and teachers overcome some of the challenges that are in front of us as far as impact to the ability to learn. Pick a person. All right, Christina. Go ahead.
Oh, me. Sorry, there's Kristen and Christina. So that gets
Don't worry. At least you don't have Christine in here because that's what they do to me all the time. They stick all of these Christines in a room and then I can't figure out who is who.
Was it start going by, like K, A, and E, and that'll just have to break it down how we separate our names. But I absolutely think that there needs to be more community engagement between teachers and families. Parent night is great. But parent night is one night. And what is it? 1 hour, 2 hours? There needs to be more. And I feel for teachers and how busy they are. And I feel for parents and how busy they are. And there needs to be room to prioritize communal engagement between the two. How do we, calling to Kristen's book, how do we bridge that gap between what goes on at home and what goes on in the schools? Parents have no idea sometimes about what's going on in schools. I mean, for those of you who are parents, how many times do you ask your child at the end of the day, how was school? And you get fine. You get the one word because and are those the questions that we should be asking? Why don't we start by looking at different questions that we can also be asking our kids? What is something that you learned in school today from your teacher? What is something that you learned in school today from your peers? Did you engage with an administrator at the school today? And what did that look like? How can we ask more open-ended questions of our kids, especially at an early age, and engage with them in a way that shows and demonstrates how interested we are in the day-to-day aspects of their lives? Because otherwise, we have no idea. We have no idea. And so when a child comes and works with me and a parent goes, how do you get them to talk to you? All I get is fine, good, nah, not good, or just like sounds sometimes. Parents aren't even, getting the full words. And I say, I give them one simple instruction that's, well, what questions are you asking? Shift from close-ended questions that are the yes, no, fine, good to open-ended questions that are, tell me about that. And start at an early age. The more that you demonstrate to your children the interest and a back and forth, what a conversation and communication looks like, the more they're willing to engage with you. And maybe if we learn more from them, both from an educator's standpoint as well as a parent standpoint, that's how we can at least start to bridge the gap. And even because each district and community looks different, there's not going to be, we can't talk about, cookie cutter education. We can't talk about cookie cutter programming that's every school, public school district needs to implement this situation. Let's focus on what's going on in the day to day and like, oh, well, you know what? These kids in this community are talking about XYZ. Well, then how can we create a night or an event or some kind of community engagement program that meets the specific need of this district and this school?
I like that. And please make sure that you are at eye level with people. One of the things is that before parents had a tendency to want to look down and talk down to them. That gives a really bad, that doesn't being eye to eye with a student or a child does not mean that you are making them equal to you. What you're telling them is you're giving them undivided attention, and what they're saying to you is important. So I always like to start with show me something that they taught you today. And then that way, that will open up the door for them to be able to either draw you a picture as a Kinder or write out the numbers that they learned today. But at least that way, now you're getting engaged. And use the same techniques you use at work, because you have to convince your manager to tell you stuff, or you got to convince your coworkers to share that tea at the water cooler, right? So why not use those same skill set on your children? And that should be very helpful. I love the fact that you said that, Christina, because that is so important. Because so many times our children are going home, we don't want to talk about it anymore. We don't want to be bothered with it. And we don't really understand why. And it has a lot to do with us, how we're receiving that information. So thank you for that for sure. All right, Keith, what do you got?
So kind of tying into that, but I want to tie it back to advocacy. I think, first of all, like talking to your kids and not at your kids, that's the key right there. The minute you talk at them, they shut you down. They could be staring you in the face and pretending that they hear nothing. It's like, wah, wah, wah. It's like Charlie Brown's teacher, right? But when you talk to them, and like Christina said, asking questions, right? Like, hey, what was the best part of your day today in school? What was your biggest struggle, right? Like those open-ended questions, and then collaborating with them, like letting them be part of the solution that they need to be successful, as opposed to our wisdom and telling them what to do. That, I think when we do that, oftentimes also they, look, our kids, as a coach, I could just say this because I hear things that a lot of kids will tell me that they won't tell their parents. Our kids want nothing more than to make us happy and make us proud. And if they think that they're going to fail us, or that something they're going to say or going to do is going to make, even though we would never judge them, we have unconditional love, they don't always see that, or they don't always feel it. Nothing, and it could be nothing the parents doing. It's just being a kid, right? So, they don't want to let us down. So if they feel like they're going to fail at something, they're not going to engage, right? But if we can learn to collaborate with them and like find solutions together, like let them be part of the process, finding that solution, that's a huge way of gaining them to come on board. But the other thing is also teaching them advocacy, like, the power of being vulnerable and asking for help, and showing them how it's inspiring to others. It's not a bad thing to ask for help. It's like, I always tell these kids, if you don't ask for help and you need it, that's stupid. When you need help, you ask for it. But when they can learn to advocate, because I do think most people that go into this profession, you go into teaching because you want to make an impact and you want to make a difference for these kids and you want to help, right? But they got so many kids, they can't possibly understand and know what's going on in every kid's head. But you've got that one kid that's like, hey, like I'm really struggling with this, and I think it's being taught, or I can't learn this way. Is there another way? Or do you have more practice problems? Like being able to advocate is huge. I mean, my kid, like, forget it. If you violated his IEP, he'd be like, hey, you're in violation of my IEP right now. I'm supposed to be like, he'd have no bone. But you know what? they knew exactly what he needed, and he got everything he needed. If we could teach our kids to not be afraid to advocate, ask for help, and even if that means starting the conversation, like, I really believe as a parent, and then when you have a CSE meeting or CPSE meeting, your kid should be there so they can advocate, so they can speak out, and you can ask them the open-ended questions there. And also the people running them, whether it's the school psychologist or the director of special ed, asking those questions in those meetings to give those kids an opportunity that they might be holding back something, but they have something to say. Because if they can get it out there, and now that teacher can understand what that kid needs differently, believe me, next time that kid's in the classroom, they're going to be thinking, you know what, I need to think about how I can help so-and-so with this. It's an awareness thing for teachers. They have so many kids, but if you're not the squeaky wheel, you're just another wheel.
Yeah, that is so true. We got a lot of questions that came out. This team, actually, we generated lots of questions. So we're going to go ahead and answer some of these questions. Kristen, I know you're okay with that.
Yeah, I saw some of those come in, so I'm happy.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that we answer that. So I'm going to start from the bottom and go up. So Phil Phil actually asked for parents, for the kids that when they don't like school, how do we address, any advice on how parents can bridge that? Because there are a lot of kids now that don't like school, nor do they have any desire to go there. So how would we address that?
I think a lot of that goes back to building that relationship with the teacher and working together with the teacher to help the child want to be in school. It's not just a parent responsibility or just a teacher responsibility there. We've got to come together and think outside of the box, like we were talking about, not putting kids in boxes and expecting them to just fit the mold. There are things that can be done to help motivate. If I'm that child's teacher and I hear they don't want to come to school, I'm going to do everything I can to build a rapport and relationship with that child so that they trust me and want to come to school. Until that happens, there's not going to be a change. And that's something that I think people forget. Would they just need to get to teaching? No, we have to stop and build relationships. And that is the foundation, not just with our students, but with our parents and our teachers as well. I know Sindel asked a question about what about the schools where they don't have, things going on like parent nights or, math night or reading night or whatever it might be. My answer to that would be, as a parent, bring it up to the Parent Teacher Association if there is a PTA or PTO organization. Bring it up to the school and say, hey, this is something I'm hearing other schools are doing. Why don't we do something like this? There were lots of times that in schools that I worked in, parents would bring forth ideas of things they wanted to have us do, and we would, help that come to fruition. So just to kind of answer twofold there.
Cool. So that works really well. I think too, that's why I have at the bottom, you'll see my mantra. This is what I swear by it. Co-parenting relationships is more than just your baby mama. Okay. It is more than that. It is, if you enter a healthy relationship, co-parenting relationship, you can have a healthy relationship with your school, which is your co-parent. They have half of your education, to be honest. By the age of 5, that those children go into school. Now you're passing them off to there. If they don't have the same value systems as you, guess what's going to happen? Your stuff that you input into your child gets to be pulled out and replaced with stuff that they feel is more valuable. So be mindful of that and build the community you want your children to have. That's what this is about. But the next question is, Troy actually asked, what if you have a child that does not know how to ask for help? So there are times, my niece, after they shut her down the way they did, it has impacted her for the next 10 years of her life. She does not ask questions as much as she should. She does not ask leadership for things. So how do they overcome that when they don't know how? So what suggestions would you give for that?
Go ahead.
I was going to say suggestions that I have for that is creating scenarios for kids to practice that in a safe environment, whether that is with you as their parent and you work with the teacher and like, hey, they had a bad experience last year where a teacher shut them down or the bus driver shut, whatever it is. But again, that co-parenting relationship between educators and parents, working with each other to be able to put that out there for the families and encouraging them to let the children practice with them. I'm also going to advocate for therapy because that's my shtick. And of course, I'm going to advocate for it. But bringing your child to work with a professional, whether that is a mental health professional or whether that's a coach, somebody who can help them advocate from a leadership standpoint, that is the safest space for them to do it, because then they can do role-playing exercises. They can come in and they can say, I really want to ask my teacher for this. I really want to ask my parent for this, or I really want to ask a friend for this. But it's really scary because in the past, I've always been shut down. So giving them safe spaces to practice, and even practicing out an outcome that's not desirable for them, but then giving them the tools to know, okay, just because it didn't go your way this time doesn't mean that it always won't go your way. And it doesn't have to mean that the world has completely collapsed. It doesn't have to mean that you are bad, you are wrong. Giving kids these tools and abilities to practice.
That's right. Go ahead, tell them. Therapy is not a bad thing, regardless of what community you come from. Therapy can help you overcome things. But I will say that I had a special needs child, and for both of them, what I did was, home was the safest place you could be. So you can come here, fall completely apart. I hate everybody and everything. Book bag goes one way, shoes goes another way, completely melt down in the foyer, right? But then the purpose of them being at home and being able to do that is that we can allow that to happen in a safe space. And then we help them put the pieces back together with a plan to how to conquer tomorrow, right? And I did that on purpose, because every time I sent my son to school, they would set him off and send him home. And I was like, pause, what are we doing? Stop doing my life harder than it has to be. But in order for me to understand what was happening, I had to let him fall completely apart and know that it's okay, because home is safe. And now let's put you back together so you can go back out and conquer the world again tomorrow, right? And I think when parents start to allow their children to just feel those big feelings, walk through it with them, and understand that everybody does this. They just do it in different ways. And it's our time to figure out how you are going to be able to successfully do that. That's going to work for you. There's one other question I wanted to ask. Phil asked this question: behavioral issues seem so difficult to overcome in the classroom and at home. What advice do all of you have that will help support that? Because behavioral issues is one of the reasons that I cannot be a teacher.
As a teacher, I'd love to just take a stab at that question in particular and say that it all goes back to building that relationship and rapport. If a parent and teacher have a good, strong bond and are working together and the student knows it, that can make all the difference in the world. Children don't work for people they don't like, and they don't listen to people they don't like. Rita Pearson says that on all of her podcasts and all of her speeches and whatnot that she gives. And it's so true. Every time, I like to think that, I can pat myself on the back. I had great relationships with my students over the years. I didn't have behavior problems in my classroom, even through COVID. And I remember as a behavior specialist being called in to assist with a classroom that was having problems on a regular basis. And I said to the students one day, well, help me understand, why do you act differently when I'm in here versus when your teacher's here? And they flat out, 7th grade, responded with, well, we know that you like us and you care about us. That's all it meant, all it took. And, just having that level of respect with them, they knew that if they upset me, that, that was going to be a problem. Whereas having no respect for the person that's in front of the room trying to take command makes all the difference. And in that situation, that teacher did nothing to build that rapport with students. Her attitude was, it's not my job to be their friend. I'm here to teach them, and that's what I'm going to do. Well, good luck. It's not going to work if that's the approach. And I say that very loosely. I left a district 2 years ago now that did away with the entire social emotional learning curriculum and department because math scores were too low. Well, math scores aren't going to go up if teachers don't know how to build relationships with kids. bottom line.
And actually, you're funneling the business over to Christina. If that's what we want to do, that's fine. But you are giving people in her industry more business because they do not know how to handle their feelings.
Nope.
We have grown people who cannot handle their feelings. You want me to tell you how you know? School shootings.
Right.
They have not been equipped to handle their feelings. They get mad and angry over a period of time, and over time it just continues to build, and now they must make somebody pay. And they make the wrong people pay for their pain because somebody said their pain was not enough to be respected. And that comes from social emotional learning. And those are our kindergarten skills that they are doing paper mache on or making little snowflakes out of and putting holes in it and saying, this is okay. Your social emotional skills are like Swiss cheese or like this snowflake, and we don't care, right? And that's where my problem is. Don't stop doing that. You're putting those people out here that's why I go to customer service. I hate going to the store. I hate going to the store anymore. I hate going to fast food restaurants. I hate going anywhere because my response is, here's your stuff. What?
Mm-hmm.
What happened? You know, and things like that. And that all stems from what we've done. So I know I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to say their final words on their way out. I thank everybody for spending their hour with us. I'm very respectful of time. So we start on time, we end on time. And I really like the conversation. This one has gone off really well. Thank everybody for the questions. So now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do round robin again. My teaching skills. We're all teachers, by the way. Anybody who says that they're not a teacher, they're not paying attention. You're teaching through some type of visual example or verbal example somehow. So we're all teachers. So we're going to go ahead and let the ladies go first, Keith. And we're going to not start with me. Start with Christina. So let's go ahead. Tell everybody how they can where's the best way to contact you and do your final words, please.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Tabitha. This was wonderful. You can get in touch with me by going to the website down below, scan the QR code. Tab really has it all set up very nicely. On there, there's a contact page to get our phone number, email, all that good stuff. If you are a New York resident, we can work with you for treatment. If you are not a New York resident, but you've got questions, you can still reach out to us that way. I'm happy to connect with anybody. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And one last piece that I will say, touching on what Kristen was saying before, the two essential components for behavior modification are setting clear expectations and empathy. Setting clear expectations and empathy. Let your kids know what to expect and approach them with compassion. You don't get what you want or you don't get what you need out of them if you approach it from almost any other position. So if you get nothing else from today, if you are looking to modify the behavior, children in the classroom or children at home, set really clear expectations on what you need from them or what is needed or expected of them, and then approach them with empathy and compassion and give them the opportunities to earn rewards. And rewards can be quality time. It doesn't have to be, that fidget spinner that they saw at 7-Eleven. Reward can be quality time, given the opportunity to earn or the opportunity to lose out on something, and put the accountability on them, give them that kind of control.
Awesome. That's great advice. Thank you so much, Christina. Yes, for sharing your time with us. All right.
I would agree with everything she just said. You said it very well, Christina. I think that's the thing, setting those expectations and showing that empathy are so key. But again, Tabitha has my QR code there for LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect with me that way. I am working nationwide with people as they, venture on the road of special education services through either 504 or IAP. So, whether I know your state or not, I'm happy to help and, do what I can. And I will most definitely let you know if there's something that I can't help you with and send you, to the right person that can. So. Thank you again, Tabitha, for having me.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. It's been a pleasure again.
Always.
All right, Keith.
Well, first, honor and a pleasure to be here with everybody because you guys gave so much golden nuggets of information that I think everybody can take away and learn something and do something with. I can be reached below it, shiftyourpower.com. It's got all my information. It's got my blog. It's got everything you need. My podcast. I think the one thing that I to think about, and it ties into all the questions, especially Troy's question about how do you get your kid who doesn't ask for help. We carefully teach our kids not to deal with their anxiety, right? Because we want to protect them. So they don't know we're anxious, but they know. They absolutely know, and they respond to it. And I think that addressing it, like not being afraid to address your anxiety head on, and having those conversations like, hey, why are you afraid? Like, what's going to happen if you don't ask for help? Let's think about like giving them those, like Christina said it, those experiential opportunities to really think about, what if I don't do this? What could be the consequence? And what's the worst thing if I do this? Right? Like thinking it through and working through the anxiety and actually like dealing with it. I tell my kids all the time, when I'm feeling anxious, I let them know, hey, I have a really crazy week and I'm feeling very anxious and overwhelmed this week. So just be conscious of it, because if I'm short with you, it's me, it's not you, but I want you to know why. And let me tell you something, it gives them permission to share when they're anxious. And when you can get them to do that, that's when everything opens up and you can get them whatever they need, and the communication opens and you can direct them to the right place and get them where they want to go. So don't be afraid to share your own anxieties, and be a real human with your kids, because if they see you for a real human being, they'll be a real human being.
I like that. And you are absolutely correct. That is 100% right. So thank you for being here with us. And then there's me. So thank you very much for your time today. We do appreciate your support. Remember, it's always better to lean into their strengths than it is to lean into their weaknesses. They see you and they already know what their weaknesses are. They don't need to be reminded. So if you can please go ahead, like and subscribe to that channel. Scan that QR code to like and subscribe. We really do appreciate you. And until next time, same bat channel. Words are power. Please remember to use them wisely.
Thank you for your time today. We appreciate the support and look forward to you visiting us again next week. Same time, same place. Until then, words are power. Please remember to use them wisely. If you have an interest, like to be on our live show, please let us know and send us a direct message.